So so you think I'm lazy, huh? You thought I forgot you guys, huh? Let's see, what time is it? 12 o'clock at night. Alright. You thought I forgot you, huh? Okay. Hello, viewers. Another beautiful day, by the way. Hope your five senses work. Health and strength is good or excellent. Yeah. You thought I forgot you guys, huh? Okay. Alright. Well, I got something for you. Oh, speaking of which. And by the way, AMD, you need to release FSR4 for RDNA 2. Yeah, you do. And 3. But anyway, what do we got here? We're talking about the Linux kernel 6.19. Yeah, I did a video on it earlier, and my energy wasn't there. It wasn't. So anyway, start over. Anyway, what do we got here? It says here Linux 6.19, 40% speed boost on older AMD GPUs and faster extension 4. So older GPU gets to live again. Alright, listen to this. It says here Linus Torvalds released Linux 6.19, moving legacy AMD Radeon GPUs to modern AMD GPU drivers and enabling larger block sizes and extension 4 for improved storage and performance. It says here AMD driver switch brings native Vulkan support to the Radeon R9 and HD 7000 series GPU, while the extension 4 file system breaks the 4 kilobyte page size limit to improve write operation by up to 50%. It says here following a 1 week delay, this kernel saw an extended 8-week development cycle, as Ubuntu 26.04 LTS will ship with the next kernel release, officially named Linux 7.0. Current Ubuntu users can install mainline 6.19 builds via unsupported methods. It says here Linux 6.19 also introduced HDR color pipeline support, better hardware compatibility for Steam Deck and ROG Ally, and file system optimization that goes beyond the headlines improvements. And then it says what's new in Linux 6.19. Old AMD Radeon GPU get native Vulkan on Linux. Alright. Yeah, the tribunal has spoken, you know. Anyway, it says here get an old AMD GPU gathering got an old AMD GPU gathering dust in a drawer. Linux 6.19 gives you a reason to dig it out. Says here, thanks to work by Valve's Timur Christoph, this kernel breathes new life into AMD's Southern Island GCN 1.0 and C Island GCN 1.1 card by switching them to the modern AMD GPU driver rather than the legacy Radeon driver. Says here, cards like the AMD Radeon HD 7970 or R9 280 and R9 290X are gaining native RAD-V Vulkan support as a result under specific OpenGL and Vulkan workloads. Benchmarks show a performance boost of up to 40%. Impressive for 2012 era GPUs in 2026. Says here, of course, that leap is both comparative and a best case scenario, but enabling old cards to work with modern translation layer like DXVK and Proton does mean that a library of games that didn't work well on the legacy driver may now run decently. Subtopic says here DRM color pipeline API brings hardware accelerated HDR. Says here Linux 6.19 introduced the DRM color pipeline, and it says API which paves the way for hardware accelerated HDR on the Linux desktop. This API enables HDR color transformation to be handled on dedicated color processing hardware like AMD Display Engine, rather than using GPU shaders which use the same GPU processing core your games do. As a result, the system should respond to HDR content changes and potentially reduce power usage and extend battery life on handhelds and laptops. Then it says Not that any of this just magically works. It relies on compatible GPUs with with write blocks and desktop environments, and compositors will need to be updated to make use of the new API kernel path that enabled it, as a GNOME and KD are doing. It says here, but with Linux 6.19 providing the underlying pieces, we're a step closer to having a stable, power efficient HDR on Linux. It says extension 4 gets larger block size and performance tweaks. As mentioned, the extension 4 file system can now support block size larger than the system page size. This makes saving archives extractions and large file copying more efficient, since the system had to juggle fewer larger chunks of data than before. This change may improve buffers I/O with write performance by up to 50%, but like all benchmarks, those are raw figures under specific ideal workload. It says no idealized workload. Real world gains will be more modest and largely imperceptible in day-to-day desktop usage. Says here, Linux 6.19 also introduced smarter caching of folder permission, POS6 access control list, or ACLS, on extension 4 file system. In earlier versions, the kernel verifies your access right every time you open a folder of files, even if said files don't use ACLS. And spoiler, most don't. Says here, but smarter caching in 6.19 means the kernel can remember if a file/folder does have a POS6 ACL and skip checking in the future. Performance gains from this tweak aren't individually huge, but a cumulative folder with hundreds of files will load a smidgen faster. Says here, other extension changes includes per CPU caching for disk requests. This reduces CPU usage during heavy workloads by giving each processor core its own path to talk to the storage system, eliminating the bottleneck where processors or cores had to wait their turn. Says here, in some cases where pages cache is bypassed, performance could be worse, but generally standard files write are improved. How much will vary by workload and drives. It will be interesting to see how real-world benchmark bears this change out. It says rounding things out is an improved approach to online defragmentation using folios rather than buffer heads. It says defragging may give a few of you scary window flashback, but it's now extension 4 keeps data order as the system is running. Folios bring more efficient memory management and greater throughput, so the kernel can reorganize files faster and put less strain on the CPU. Another extension, mainline ROG Ally and Steam Deck support. Linux 6.19 sees the ASUS ROG Ally gains mainline kernel support for hardware controls. The new ASUS Armory driver, ASUS Armory, exposed BIOS level video RAM allocation, TDP limits, and power profile via System FS, so users can tweak performance and extend battery life without without needing to rely on Windows only tools. It says here, Valve Indomitable Steam Deck isn't left out. Says here, Linux 6.19 adds the Steam Deck's APU ID to the K10 temp driver. If you run Ubuntu or other distros on your Steam Deck with this kernel, temperature monitoring will work out of the box, something that previously needed Valve's specific kernel package. Yeah, Steam Deck fans are spoiled. Says here, laptop and motherboard hardware support expanded. An updated Alienware WMAX driver adds support for the Area 51 X16 and 16X laptop. Power mode switching, thermal controls, and other features found in the Alienware Commands Center. It says AWCC are all available in Linux 6.19. Users of older turbo laptops can access battery charge rate limiting and RGB control on selected model via the newly upstream Uniwell laptop driver, and the Lenovo IdeaPad now has a rapid charge support on Linux for fast battery top UPS. Says here, whoops, almost lost it here. Says here, the Asus NBWMI driver now supports a display toggle key on the Asus ZenBook 14. It says the ZenBook UX425QA and UM425QA models benefit from assorted fixes in the i8042 drivers. It says with this update, it's now possible to monitor temperature, power, and current stats on selected Apple Silicon device via new Mac SMC HWMon driver, and to read and control fan speed through System Management Controller SMC. It says here on the desktop side, a slew of Asus motherboard gains sensor support, including the ROG Strix X470-1 gaming ROG Strix X870-F gaming Wi-Fi, and ROG Strix X870E-H gaming Wi-Fi 7 for CPU package motherboards and VRM temperature reading. Then it says live update orchestrator. It says here not a desktop oriented feature, but this kernel merged Google Live Update Orchestrator LUO code, which changes the way kernel update works in cloud environments and hypervisor, i.e. place where a regular reboot would result in expensive downtime. It says LUO is a subsystem able to manage warm reboots via the KEX handover KHO framework, working across 4 distinct states: normal, prepared, frozen, and updated. It says here, this means the kernel can preserve the state of a selected resource like memfd file descriptor, and during the transition from one kernel version to the other without the need for a full hardware reboot. Upgrade goes from taking minutes to a few milliseconds. It says, wondering if that what Ubuntu Live Patch does. No Live Patch only applies kernel patches to the current kernel without the need for a reboot. It isn't able to switch out the entire kernel without a reboot. Yeah. It says here, blue screen panic support expands to more CPUs. Usually if Linux kernel hits an issue during booting, it goes back. In recent version of the Linux kernel works has gone into showing a blue screen message during critical kernel errors to give users some idea of what went wrong. In 6.19, the kernel blue screen message expanded to work on more types of hardware. The Intel CPU driver adds DRM panic support in this release, allowing blue screen of death message to show for users on Intel integrated and dedicated graphics, as does the modern AMD GPU driver, which, as noted earlier, now supports older Radeon GPUs too. It says here, as the blue screen is shown on the display with info, it needs to show even when things are really screwed up, like when the system main memory is corrupted. Kernel 6.19 allows panic support to work directly on VRAM or video RAM. It says assorted changes. It says there's a lot more to this kernel update than the key highlights above. It says other changes deliver pronounced improvement, not least in the networking stack, where 6.19 touts a 4x improvement in heavy transfer TX workload This is achieved by replacing the standard busy lock in the transfer queuing layer with a lockless list. It says while sounding though this is don't expect an uptick in general computing. The change largely benefits high density AI/ML cluster and networked GPU environments, i.e. high-end networking. No streaming, YouTube in 4K doesn't count. Says here, Rust integration continues with 6.19 adding new modules, parameters to offer parity with traditional C drivers, as well as first abstraction for 12C integrated circuit bus drivers are written in Rust. See, there's still some good use for C and C++, you know. Anyway, it says here, other changes. Ready? It says here, removal of the named genocide function. Now, kill space, what's this, litter, and dash super. Then it says, hyper v L1 VH mode lets Linux hypervise drive Azure host. Then it says new control fonts terminus 10x18. That's 10x18. It says BTRFS scrub and device replace now suspend properly during system sleep. It says Realtek RTW 89 support for RTL 8922DE Wi-Fi 7. It says Adreno X2 85 GPUs mainline support for Snapdragon X2 Elite ARM laptops. Then it says parallel CPU hot plug-in support RISC-V. Then it says Intel XC3P graphics for upcoming Nova Lake processors, and then PCIe link encryption for confidential VMS. Says here, that must be virtual machines. Says here, in all, a solid kernel update, well worth the extra week wait. It says the HDR graphic support will bear fruit in the long term as compositors and hardware make use of it, but the extension for optimization will be felt by most, and AMD GPU support change will deliver immediate benefit if you own older Radeon cards. Well, I guess this applies to the statement, you never appreciate something until it's gone. So if you held on to your older Radeon GPU, whether you had them in the closet or in a storage or something, be glad you did. Linux 6.19 to the rescue. Linux kernel, that is. It says here, getting Linux 6.19 in Ubuntu. It says here, if you're reading from Ubuntu, you won't get an update to Linux kernel 6.19 automatically. To benefit from the latest changes, you'll need to install Linux 6.19 yourself via unofficial means, be that a mainline kernel PPA and a dev package, or compiling the kernel from source. It says installing canonical mainline kernel build is not recommended in most cases. They lack certain enablement and hooks that certified Ubuntu Linux kernel do offer. If your system is working well, don't be impatient to upgrade. However easy some methods may make it. It says here, however easy some methods may make it. That sentence needs some work. But anyway, it says here, Ubuntu 26.04 LTS is out in April 2026 and will ship with the Linux 7.0 kernel by default. That will contain all of the improvements here, plus the next batch. Okay, so that should do it for you, you Linux users, you Asus ROG Ally, ROG Ally X. You benefited from this, and you Steam Deck for nerds, freaks, geeks. Yeah, you benefited from this. Yeah, Linux 6.19 to the rescue. But you old Radeon GPUs, yeah, if you held on to it, good. If you threw it away, You missed out. Too bad. Yeah, so yeah, Linux 6.19 take care of you guys. But yeah, they're gonna change this to there's an article on Pharonics that I gotta get to too, where they're talking about they're gonna change it to Linux kernel 7.0. So yeah, see what they got in the comments section here. Who we got here? Someone says here our next step is to remove kill and kill all commands. And then someone else here says, I hope they did. Genocide is a serious thing, especially. Someone says here, thank God you told us. I can't wait for the next episode. And then someone else here says, the removal of the normal genocide function. Please don't tell me. And another person here says, as long as you can easily access your grub menu. Yeah, anyway, so Linux 6.19, man. Oh yeah, alright, now I got one more article to get here, so I can get to it. So it's over on Pharonics. See if I can pull this up here. Pharonics, where are you? See if I can get to it here. Oh, here we go. Oh, here we go. It says Linus Torvald confirms the next Linux kernel is Linux 7.0. It says here, following Linus Torvald release of Linux 6.19 stable, Linus Torvald is now out with his customary release announcement. Notably, he officially confirmed that the next kernel version is Linux 7.0 as the successor to Linux 6.19. Linus Torvald wrote in the Linux 6.19 release announcement, I have more than 3 dozen pull requests for when the merge window opens tomorrow. Thank you to all. No, thank you to all. Or it should have been thanks to you all. Thank you to all the early maintainers, and as people have mostly figured out, I am getting to the point where I am being confused by large numbers. It must be that age thing. It said anyway. It says you're almost running out of fingers and toes again. So the next kernel is going to be called 7.0. Says here, so it's on to the Linux 7.0 kernel cycle kicking off tomorrow. Linux 7.0 merge window will run the next 2 weeks. Linux 7.0 stable will be out in mid-April, as the kernel version also squeezing into Ubuntu 26.04 LTS. And it says there are a lot of exciting changes on the table for 7.0. Yeah. So the cycle continues. So yeah, I'll try to put that out there when they release it. This has 18 comments on it. So yeah. I think let's see what they got up in the comment section. See if I can snag a few here. See what they talking about here. Let's see here. What's this? Someone else here says, I know it's just a kernel release name, but I hope 7 feels big with a huge number of super significant. Someone else here says, great to hear. Shame on Google for keeping Android now even more out of sync. And then someone else here says, I wonder if Linux 20 will go back to Linux 1. And someone else here says, no, this would happen after it's all written in Rust. And someone else here says, I wish it was 26.0. It tells us when it is released. And another person here says, finally, the 6 has been terminated. Anyway, and then someone else here says, I don't know, perhaps it's reasonable. They stick to LTS kernels. And another person here says here, what do you mean almost? You're saying you've got more than 20? He put a laughing emoji on it. And another person here says, up to version 7, and they still haven't re-implemented it in Vulkan. Yeah, these these guys are funny. Anyway, see if I can go here. See if I can get to the comments here. They always do this. No, I don't want to see that. Get out of there. Nope, I don't need you. Out of there. And now they mess me up. See, this is what I deal with, man. Anyway, see if I can get this done here. And 24 minutes, the viewers love it. Anyway, see if I can get to this, get to these comments here. Yeah. So yeah, the ball keeps moving with Linux, man. The ball keeps moving. All right, now where's comment number 2? Let me see if I can get to it. Oh, someone else here says, who is this? It says, and prevent the confused hype among the non-technical caused by the major number bump. Linux 7 must be a huge deal, right? Question mark. Then another person says, I can't wait to get Linux 7. Then someone else here says, two almost absolute truth. Valve can't count to 3. That is true. He is talking about Half-Life 3, you know. And then he says, and Torvald can't count to 20 XD. Anyway, someone else here says, I understand that according to Torvald, we're at something like version 1.120, right? Question mark. And then another person here says, it feels like today the kernel major version changes incredibly frequently, whereas back in the day it felt like 0.9x stuck around forever, and then 2.x. I really want to say 2.6.x, but it's been a hot minute. It says here, after that major number started shifting rapidly, he says, hell, it feels like yesterday that I had a 7900X and a A770, and choose a rolling distro. You forgot an extra zero out of that. You forgot an extra O. It's supposed to be 2 O's, but anyway, a rolling distro for at least kernel to helpful support both as best as possible. OpenSUSE tumbleweed simply because of OpenQA. Some testing is better than none, really, for a rolling release, and TBH has served me well. It says, had I stuck to my original 5950X or 5900X upgrade path, I probably would have been on an Ubuntu derivative or flavor/spin, whatever they call them. It's still my most comfortable old pair of slippers, even though over the years I have used every distro of note but Slackware and Gen 2. It says, you don't know how glad I am that recompiling the kernel is an optional feature nowadays for the most part. Yeah, and then someone else here says they always use the latest LTS. And then another person says after 6, 7. And then someone else here says only for the latest device. And another person here says I kind of agree with you, but it is a very bad idea if you were to use your year month. This is a psychological aspect with that. Unlike milk, old software do not or magically go bad despite slightly insane people believe otherwise. The sad thing with year month is not the scheme itself, but that it quickly feel old and outdated. Besides, it does not convey information to the end users like version and revision does, or at least used to do. Sure, you might argue that our version revision don't have much meaning in a large, fast-moving project like Linux either, and that would be absolutely true, but it requires just a more effort to find out how old it is. For example, my phone had kernel 6.1, which was released in 2022. Old? He says, he said, yeah. And he said, unless, he says, no. And it's well tested by now, as shown by the number of patches applied to the revision. Besides, 6.1 does not feel old and scary as 22.9 does. Does it? And that's that. So yeah, Linux 6.19, man. I mean, yeah. People sharing their opinions on this, you know. So Some are looking forward to 7. So some are saying that Linus Torvald can't count, and Gabe Noel forever can't count to 3. So yeah, but 6.19. Oh yeah, it's here, man. So I had to get this video out today. You know, I had to get it done. So you guys are good. You and your you and your Steam Decks. You and your Orange Pies. You and your your laptop and your desktop and your servers. 6.19 to the rescue. So if you're new to the kernel, you know, ask experienced users. You know, they can give you some help on it. You know, if you know someone that's good with Linux, they can help you with the kernel. You know, get you started. And always, when it comes to Linux, you know, it's always good to have 2 computers. You know, one that's fully working, and then one that you mess with, or I have 2 computers working, or I have 3 computers, 2 that's fully working with different Linux distros, and then one you mess with. You know, so yeah, and then take it from there. But yeah. Linux community is alive and well, man. So you know, people are at different levels. You know, when it comes to Linux, you know, and then you know, never afraid to ask questions. You know, so they can help you. But yeah, Linus Torvald is on it, and you know, he's gonna go back to his ranting. You know, and you know, give his little 2 cents on what he sees wrong and what needs to be done, and yeah, and keep the ball moving. You know? So yeah, Linux is doing pretty good, man. Steam Deck is still getting update. Asus ROG got an update. Older GPUs got a huge. They're good now. So if you got an old GPU laying around, might want to give Linux 6.19 a try. You know. So yeah. Anywho, I mean, the network, even networking got an update. So yeah. So you guys are good for it now, and hope that was good enough for you. Enjoy, and I'll see you guys next time. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching. See you guys next time. Bye for now.